Hello and welcome to our Bitesize business continuity and disaster recovery training, brought to you by Alcumus Issaquah. Business continuity and disaster recovery are key elements of building a resilient business. But what's the difference between business continuity and disaster recovery? Many people think it's the same thing, but they aren't. Business continuity is all about keeping your business running through any disruption or disaster. For example, what steps to take to ensure you remain open for business if your IT system crashes. Disaster recovery is about what steps you take to put things right. So for example, if your IT system has crashed, how do you recover it to the position you were at before the disaster? So how does business continuity work? This largely depends on the kind of organisation you are. Combined with your business impact analysis, your organisation should be able to identify the people, processes, technology, equipment, and other elements required to keep a service or product continuing and to keep the business operating at ideal service levels. Items typically considered in a business impact analysis include generators, power management, water or gas, buildings, offices, locations, people, suppliers and stock, software and hardware, equipment, operational goods, and PPE. The business impact analysis is used to identify the key services and resources required to operate. The risk assessment process will consider the impact of each of these services and establish their priority. This helps in your planning to ensure the business can operate at minimal levels. An interesting exercise is to ask each department of your organisation to have a discussion around how long they think the organisation could survive without the following: the HR department, access to your building, finance, top management, legal compliance, loss of all data across systems, loss of your IT network, and stoppage of operations. Your answers will depend on the many factors, including your appetite for risk and impact. All organisations have different risk and impact appetite. The BIA exercise should have identified some services and departments which are higher priority for recovery. These priorities need to be identified further, and a lot depends on your appetite for risk and impact. You need to determine your maximum acceptable outage, or MAO, sometimes known as a maximum tolerable period of disruption, or MTPD. This is the maximum amount of time it would take for adverse impacts, which might arise as a result of not providing a product or service or performing an activity to become unacceptable. Then there are some measures that relate specifically to IT systems and networks. The recovery point objective, or the RPO, is the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time. It indicates the age of the files or the data in the backup storage required to resume normal operations if a computer system or network failure occurs. It is also referred to as a maximum data loss. The recovery time objective, or the RTO, is the targeted duration of time a business process must be restored within, and the level of service required to meet after a disaster or disruption, in order to avoid unacceptable consequences associated with a break in the business continuity. Good business continuity management also ensures that your business continues operating through regular maintenance. For example, you occasionally need to remove staff from the front line to train them. Utilities are sometimes switched off to test them, and IT systems are powered down to install updates. Your business continuity plan will identify procedures to keep you running through these planned activities, which might otherwise result in a complete stoppage. And of course, regular maintenance can also reduce your chances of disaster and mean that you are better prepared for the event of a disaster. Of course, when things go wrong, and sometimes possibly very wrong, you need a process and supporting documentation on how to recover a system, operation, process, department, or in some cases, a client. Typically, you need to plan for the recovery of physical buildings, staff, departments such as IT operations, etc. Different priorities will be in place per department. For example, operations of course will be high priority, whilst the recovery of the HR may be quite low. Connectivity and IT systems, supplies, and other specific processes or systems, which could range from each product and service to physical equipment in the organisation, say a type of lift for moving heavy goods, for example. Your disaster recovery plan needs to cover a whole range of eventualities and issues. Some of the more typical things that you should consider include invocation. You need clear instructions of when and how to evoke the business continuity plan. Responsibilities. You should identify who's in charge, who makes the decisions, and who leads. Facilities, suppliers, assistants, and authorities. Make sure you have correct contact details for partners and suppliers and that they are integrated into your plans. Stand down. What are your requirements for the activity to be stopped? How is this communicated? Resources. What do you need? Who do you need? And who should help you? So once you've recovered, you should reflect on what happened. What went right and what went wrong? What didn't go quite as you planned? You need to review resources and, of course, the well-being of your staff after such an event. Regardless of whether you were performing an exercise, full-scale test, or recovery from an actual disaster, lessons learned should be explored. It should never be assumed that everything will work exactly as intended, as all invocations can be different, even if the same plan is activated. An element that organisations tend to miss after recovery is looking at the needs and expectations of their staff. For example, a large multinational finance company was hacked, exposing details of many customers. They had to recover a number of systems and business departments. Although the business did return to normal activity, they didn't recognise the negative impact that it would have on their staff. Although this was an information security related incident, no one had prepared the staff for what was about to happen, nor the damage to the business had actually suffered, and the consequences of this. Staff were harassed by disgruntled clients at work, on the way to work and on social media. Internal departments developed negative views of the IT and the security team, which resulted in an internal conflict between departments. There are, of course, ways to mitigate parts of this, but in this situation, resources such as people and suppliers can often be forgotten about after the event. So in this summary, we've given you a taster of the positive impacts of investing in a business continuity plan and disaster recovery plans. And hopefully you will now understand the differences between them. It's worth noting that organisations of every size and every sector can benefit from this management approach. For example, there's hardly any businesses out there that didn't have to deal with the challenges of COVID-19. But this isn't just about major issues. This is more about mundane, everyday challenges like dealing with IT crashes and staff absences. Please do check out alcumusgroup.com or alternatively phone our offices and see how we can help you build a more resilient business.